Welcome to the EdTech Unpacked podcast, where we aim to inspire and equip educators to create learning experiences, highlighting a thoughtful approach to the integration of technology as we teach and transform the lives of our students.
We're so glad you've joined us on this episode of EdTech Unpacked, where we're going to dive in and unpack the topic of generative AI and how it impacts the classroom, how teachers should be thinking about generative AI, its potential, the struggles that it also presents, and how it has the potential to enhance student learning, and also how it has the potential to make work that you do today easier and quicker as an educator. My name is Aaron Long, and I have a background in education, as you might guess. I graduated in 2002 with my undergrad in religion from Southwestern Adventist University, shout out SWAU, and later went on to complete my education certification and receive my master's degree from Walden University in instructional design and technology. I have a true passion for helping others learn about and themselves see the potential for the positive impacts technology can have in a classroom setting when done well, when done thoughtfully, and I most love being part of a team that we see positive direction together and working together to further our mission as educators.
And I'm Desmond Suarez, and I work at Richmond Academy, where I've been teaching for over a decade. I teach religion, social studies, computers, videography, and it feels like so much more some days. But I'm a very proud graduate of Southern Adventist University with my bachelor's degree in religious education, a minor in computers. And I've also completed my master's in instructional systems and learning technology from the great Florida State University. I really love helping people learn so that they can fulfill the greatest potential in life and finding the best tools to accomplish this.
Awesome. And I guess I forgot to mention that I'm currently working at Burton Adventist Academy in Arlington, Texas, where I serve as our recruitment and development director. I get to do all things from web management to just connecting with people to help them learn about the opportunities we present. Today's episode, as we dive into generative AI, we reflect back. Desmond, if you can believe it, it was just barely over a year ago where OpenAI released ChatGPT at the end of November in 2022 to the public. And so much has happened. Desmond and I were sitting here reminiscing about the recent events, the shakeup that's occurred. We're not going to go into that today, but it's been exciting to watch. If you're tech news junkies like we are, you've probably had a blast just kind of following the storylines. But it's amazing how much has happened in such a short time. But as we look to the future, we are here today to help educators just get a healthy framework for what is AI, generative AI, and how should we be approaching it.
Yeah, so let me give you a little bit of background on what this technology is and where it works and how it works. I'm sure you've heard the term AI bounced around a lot for years, and the first AIs were created decades ago. But the short discussion, the short explanation of the most recent ones, and we're talking about today, are the generative AIs, primarily the text-based. But the generative AIs use a technology that was originally introduced by Google in a paper in 2017. They are called transformers. And to make a big technology that I understand, but still it's so deep, so I don't understand all of it. But basically, they gather as much examples as possible. There's so much writing that they've gathered from all sorts of sources. They gather as much as they can into one place, and then it uses probability to predict the next likely word to come. Therefore, it actually sounds quite intelligent and is pretty good at language, maybe like a smart eighth grader, but it's pretty good at language, but it is not often very good at facts. Although over the last year or so, it has improved its accuracy, I still would not trust it with a factual response. In a lot of ways, these generative AI tools are like calculators for everything else, which might be a little scary because math teachers, when calculators were first introduced in, the 1970s was when they were first created, but it wasn't until later that they made their way into the classroom. And that had to really be a big shakeup, and had to change the way math teachers taught math. And for all those English teachers who were laughing at the math teachers, it's our time, all right? For everyone else, it's our time, where now there's calculator, the chat, generative chat are kind of the calculator for everything else. And therefore, we get some concerns.
That's a great place to start, Desmond, because honestly, that's probably what most teachers have thought the most about. It's the concerns they have for AI, the problems it presents, in particular, the potential for cheating. And so we want to take a minute and just talk about that. That's real. Kids love to push the boundaries.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, at our school, Richmond Academy, and I like to think that we're a pretty tech-forward school. I'm a pretty tech-forward teacher, evidenced by this podcast. But when when they first introduced the generative AI chats, we blocked them pretty quickly. Now, when we did block them, I was and that was my idea. I reached out to our IT person. I was like, we got to block these right now. But I also said for now, because it is something that, and I have this discussion with my students, is until us teachers, more than just me, until all of the teachers and the students better understand the proper uses of these, we have temporarily blocked them. And so, cheating is the first thing to mind. It used to be, my students have been submitting their assignments over on the computer for a long time. And so I'd get an assignment where it looked like the answers had been from another source, were not written the way the student normally writes. I'd simply copy it, put it in quotes in Google, and I'd find it almost immediately. With generative AI, that doesn't work, because every time you run a prompt, they give you something new.
Well, and on that note, there's corporations out there looking to just come up with tools to help teachers catch cheating using generative AI. In fact, one of them that comes to mind, I think it's called GPT-0. I don't know if you've seen this one. You and I haven't talked about it. I haven't
seen that one.
But as an educator, I went ahead and signed up for it. I wanted to see what they were doing, how effective it was. And it is pretty solid. I've given some testing experiences on it myself, and it's pretty good. What these tools seek to do is basically score a writing piece and say 80% chance this was generated by generative AI. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. There's no way to really tell for sure, because these language models are already that good that it's impossible to tell for sure.
Yeah, so I would use those as a tool, just like you said, like use them as a way of being like, maybe this is more likely. I wouldn't use it as saying, like, taking it to a student and say, hey, they say you're 80% using it, you're using it. You're going to have to use your great teaching skills. Another concern that I have, and I think we probably need to talk about in education, we'll have a future episode on this, but is student privacy. The reality is that most of them, unless it's an education specific AI, and unless they have in their privacy policy said that, have acceptable policies on student privacy, there's no privacy. And that's important for you to know as a user. Like, don't have it do your taxes. Don't put personal information in there. And especially, we have both a moral and a legal responsibility to our students' privacy. And so as you approach using these, we have to be very careful about how we use them in the classroom because of students' privacy. But there are our guest coming up a little bit. He's going to share about an AI that he works for, a company he works for, and it is more education focused. There's a lot of education focused AI, generative AIs that may be better to use in the classroom.
And probably a lot of those we don't know about yet because they're startups. And so it's exciting to see. I mean, this is a changing landscape daily. Another one here, copyright. So Desmond and I, both longtime educators here, and it's something that you have to be familiar with on some level, but this is the Wild West. And so questions about who owns the material when maybe it's my original thought I'm putting into the generative AI, but they're not my words coming out. So then what am I supposed to do with that? I'm not here to give the answer. Desmond, do you want to give the answer to that?
I would love to. However, I think the answer lies in the future laws and court decisions are going to be made. At this point, copyright is really ambiguous or undefined, I'd say, for generative AIs at this point. Both what they're allowed to access on the training side, but also then what they produce is still really in process. A big concern that you might also have is, for one, like you might be terrified that it's going to take your job. For one, if you're a good, skilled teacher, I think you're safe.
For now, at least, right?
For now. Well, I think hopefully, and this is where, we have our hope for humanity, is that no matter how good a AI gets, the teacher brings so much more than just knowledge to the students. You as a professional educator, perhaps the most valuable things that you bring to your students is the stuff that is not directly in the curriculum, the relational parts, the personal experiences. And no matter how good an AI gets, it can never do that. And so I don't envision any time in any reasonable near future where AI is going to significantly reduce the number of teachers that we have. And I really hope that it never really fully happens. But as a teacher, our biggest responsibility, and this is a realm where, taking AI automation, taking jobs can become a political issue. And we're going to stay away from politics. But as a teacher, the discussion, for this context doesn't really matter, because as a teacher, your first job really is to prepare your students, right? Is to help them be prepared to be citizens that can work well in the workforce, that can be good humans. And so it's important that we don't block these forever, that we do learn how to use them, so that your students are proficient and are hireable to do great jobs and use these tools and not let the tools do it for them.
That's a great intro to the last major bullet point we've outlined here of challenges, of concerns with generative AI. And that is, a lot of teachers are worried, and rightfully so, that it has the potential to take the thinking out of the learning experience, that students will use these tools to do the thinking for them. And that's a very valid concern. All these are valid concerns. This one is very valid as well. And so what it really necessitates is that you, as an educator, this is something we really want to drive home in this episode today, that you as an educator embrace yourself personally using generative AI. This is not a message for a segment of educators. It's really a message for all of you. Because how can you possibly give guidance on a tool that you don't use personally regularly? You fast forward 6 months, a year, 2 years, these tools will be incredibly integrated. They're already becoming integrated from many of the design tools that we use. Many of you are probably Canva users. You've seen that they've just rolled out at the time of this episode a new generative AI tool. Adobe's integrated it already. Many platforms, Microsoft, it's popping up everywhere. There's really no way to stay away from it. And so the only way that you as an educator are going to be able to frame it in an appropriate way and give healthy guidance to your students on the role that it should play is to use it yourself. And so while this is a concern, it's also a challenge to you that if we don't want it to remove the thinking from learning, then you need to embrace using it yourself, learn about it so that you can give quality guidance. Therefore, really bringing value back to your role as an educator. It's what we do.
For sure. And you were talking we were talking earlier about how you've seen people use it to enhance communication. That seems like a pretty good use of it.
Absolutely. And so let's segue into that. I mean, the good uses, the positive things. Firsthand, I've used it quite a bit myself. The very first thing many of us did is get in and play around with prompts, with ChatGPT. and you drop a prompt, it's just phenomenal. In fact, one of my early experiences, I don't remember if I've shared this with you yet, was with my son, who's now 18. And he was sharing with me some of the things he had done. And I still remember what he said. We were driving somewhere one day about this time last year. Once again, it wasn't that long ago. And he said, yeah, Dad, I put in a prompt here, and it was something like, create a speech in the style of Martin Luther King Jr., and he came up with a random topic. And man, he read us this speech. It was like 2,000 words. It was whatever it was maxing out at the time. And it was so phenomenal. We were all just in the car, just floored at the quality of the writing. And I was like, man, he actually triggered for me, like, wow, I've got to learn about this, because that was profound. So, a few days later I get in and I'm giving prompts and testing it out. And man, the rest is history there. But fast forward to today, my fellow educators here, my admin team, most of them are either using it actively or testing it out, because it is so good at saving you time, writing coherent, well thought responses when the prompts are given well. And so speeding up the writing process. This could be communications with parents, even student emails. I wouldn't say we have a lot of teachers using it yet for like lesson creation, although we have one that's played around a fair bit with it and had some really interesting stuff come out of that. The communication side, though, saving time, high quality. You're still the designer of the message. In fact, that's the beauty of it. The back and forth nature of these platforms. You instruct it what to do or ask it to do something. You don't love it. You ask it to revise it, shorten it, lengthen it, clarify things. It's so amazing at its ability to redraft and within a matter of a couple minutes have an incredibly well-written piece.
And I want to use that idea as well. I want to make sure we have this conversation framed right. For both you and your students, these are not, please don't approach it as like it's going to do the work for me. For one, that goes back to that job thing of like, oh, they won't need me. And yes, maybe in certain industries and certain jobs, they will need fewer people, just like when there was computers, they need fewer people to do math on paper. But you can do so much more, but it's not going to do it for you. And if you've done enough of these, you'll know that you don't, it's very much not to the point where it can just do it for you. Because sometimes it'll give you a response that is like mind-blowingly awesome. And then the next time it's like, did you understand what I typed? Like, it's just so off. But most of the time it sounds really good, but then there's just a few parts here and there that you can just tweak. And you can just refine a little, and you can polish it, and you can give it your voice. And there are even some AIs that are coming out right now where you can feed in some of your own writing. So you could have it look at, maybe you give it a bunch of emails or a bunch of stuff you've written, and it can shape into your voice a little more. But still, please go back and read it. A fun one that I've done with my students recently. So I teach a videography class, and we're in the process of writing a script for a short film. And I'm really excited about it. Maybe I'll share about the short film later. It's still in development. But in the script writing process, I wanted them to be able to see examples and analyze examples. And so for short films. And so I went and I had it write a few short film scripts. And I started very general, like without any shaping. It's like, write me a short film script. Right. And they were just, they were in some ways really good, but in another way they were soulless. Like it really was like you could feel as you read it, it's like there's no humanness to this. And we were able to look at it as a class and analyze it, break it down, and for one, not be afraid of offending anyone. Right, there was no script writer that we were poking at, and also like we were able to talk about, all right, if it had this element or it had that element, it would be really good, but it has this other weird element, and this doesn't work at all. And then I had them for their assignment, they had to go, and I asked them to write 5 scripts using generative AI, and then pick the best one and submit the best one. And then we read those as a class and again, broke them down and said, here's what worked, here's what didn't. What did you find interesting? What did you learn from the process? And it was a really great discussion to help lead us and to learn about script writing, and what makes a good script and what doesn't, and the story arc and so on.
All right. As you were talking there, Desmond, I couldn't help but think about, a course I teach at Southwestern Adventist University. Shout out SWAU once again on educational technology to the undergrad students there. And last year, this time, I was working on designing that course, slipped in 2 lessons on generative AI. Just wanted the students to be able to experience it, learn a little bit about it, its uses. I'm thinking forward to the upcoming semester and, the need to increase the experience there because it's come so far in just a year when we talk about the script writing, the personal assistant element that we're not going to really be able to dive into too much here. The ability or the need to learn about the professional uses. To me, it's profound how far it's come and how important it is, once again, that call to action, that we dedicate time to learning about it by doing.
Mm-hmm. And I want to for you and for the educators listening, you probably should have some dedicated time where you're instructing about these generative AIs. However, more what I recommend is the integration. You have an assignment, how can they use it for this or that? And yeah, how can you use it for this or that? I want to talk about using it as a tool for your students in writing, because it's going to be very tempting for your students, and a lot of them will do it, to just have it do the writing for them. But really teaching them how to use it as a writing assistant is a really powerful thing. And so I think a good way to do that is, have them write things that are too personal or too local for them to completely use the AI to write it. You might have them write something about something that's happening at school, or something that's happening in their town or at their church or in their personal life, where they can use it as a way to maybe frame it or shape it, but then they have to really do more prompting on the AI side, but then also the editing and framing on the personal side, on the finished side, and that will help them kind of frame it. One more use, and then I think we should skip to our interview. But is we've talked about the text generating, but there's also powerful stuff in doing the visual, so the images. I know for me, I've used it. I preached a sermon a month or two ago, and I wanted all my illustrations to have the same art style. And while I'm not an artist or can't pay an artist to make the unique illustrations I wanted in the same style, I was able to use an image generator to create. And yeah, there was problems in the images, but to create the images to have the same style. And it was fun to have my students who were in the audience come up to me later and were like, "You used an AI, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." Do you think it worked? Yeah, it was cool. It worked. But they noticed because we've talked about it and we've been using it.
Well, I know we're about to jump to the interview here, but I'm thinking about the image over my shoulder right now. This is something that Desmond worked up on generative AI.
That's true.
So just came to mind.
Yeah, you can see mine too. There, I did not design that, but I had an AI design it for us. I forgot about that. Very cool.
Practical.
All right, well, let's hear from Lorin Koch in our interview. All right. We are here with Lorin Koch, and it is a privilege and an honor to have you here with us, Lorin. I got connected with Lorin this summer when we were asked to create a course together about generative AI, and we'll talk more about that at the end of the interview, but it's been cool getting to make that course with you, Lorin, and then later we met each other at a convention and got to hang out a little bit there. And so we thought it'd be great to do this episode on generative AI. And so we decided to bring in the expert. By the way, he was the main presenter of generative AI at the convention. And Lorin, I don't know how many people I heard talk about your session. I heard people say both that they loved it and they really learned a lot. I also heard people say, I really tried to make it there, but it was already full and I couldn't get in.
There were a
So
lot
for
of
all
people.
those in the second group, yeah, and I'm hoping that some of the people who weren't able to get in can get some of the blessing of that here in this episode. Hopefully the audience overlapped quite a bit. So anyways, yeah.
I'm actually excited myself. I didn't get to make any of those sessions. Desmond and I were hanging out in the convention hall. So Lorin, tell us a little bit about yourself and your work that you do.
Yeah, I am an Adventist educator. I've been a teacher for about 20 years in secondary schools, mostly English, but various other subjects, including computers. And I got really interested in AI several years ago. I was following somebody on Twitter who would put in these crazy prompts and get funny text back, named Janelle Shane, who's a researcher in Colorado. Interesting Twitter feed. And then a couple of years ago, I started a doctorate in education. I graduated with that last year in 2022, and I've been trying to get hired by a college, and that hasn't happened yet. So in the meantime, I started to do some online teaching and online jobs. And so I've been doing that for this school year, several different projects, but mostly surrounding curriculum development.
And
awesome.
you were telling
Sounds
us
like
you recently got a new job, right?
Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago, here in November of 2023, I saw a company that was advertising for someone to make some lesson plans on AI in the classroom. The company is called Pedagogy.Cloud. And so I just started this a couple of weeks ago, and I've been making some lesson plans to get AI in teachers' hands and talk about the ethics of AI in various ways.
We'll hear more about that at the end of this interview. I'm excited. First of all, and Lorin, you and me have had a lot of discussions about that. I think even Aaron and I have talked about this. But how do you think generative AI is changing the way we're learning?
Yeah, it had a huge impact when ChatGPT came out a year ago in November. I guess just November, December of 2022, right before the end of the year. Students found out about it. They've been using it for productive and less than productive purposes. I talked to several students who used it to cheat, to just shortcut on their assignments. There's some who, always try any method to take a shortcut. And then I've also talked to some students who basically don't even know anything about it. So they've heard about it and haven't really tried it. But, once students know something, it's up to teachers to figure out how to use it. And to try to make it so that they actually can get some work done rather than just take the shortcut, because it does contravent a lot of the normal methods of doing an assignment. So I totally see students using this and it making them less effective at actually looking at a problem, diagnosing it, and then coming up with a solution. Kind of like a calculator does for math. This is kind of like that for thinking through language.
All great input there, and this is one of those topics where by the time this episode airs, right, it's going to be a whole different landscape, whether that's days, weeks, or months. A key question though I think a lot of teachers struggle with right now is how should they approach using generative AI in the classroom today?
Yeah, I think that teachers have got to try it because a lot of students know about it. I think a lot of teachers, as it started to come out last year, really wanted to approach it with students because they wanted the knowledge to come from them as teachers, but they didn't know how to do it in a way that wouldn't just give away the apple cart or whatever you want to say. Just give them the tool to the most efficient cheating ever. But in order to talk about it, teachers need to use it. They need to have some experience. So they need to get in there and try it out. They need to, put in some of the questions that they have on their assignments that they're used to using, or essay prompts or whatever, and see what it gives, just to see what it's likely to provide. They need to spend some time figuring out how to do effective prompts too, which would be prompt engineering, where they put something in and it's not exactly what you want. So you come up with a way of saying it slightly differently, or you ask for specific tasks or specific types of text so that it actually gives you exactly what you're looking for. So just getting in there, using it, trying it, seeing what it comes up with. Try different tools. There's so many generative AI tools right now. Text, images, everything you can imagine. There's a lot that are tailored specifically for teachers too. And I was telling students last year, this is kind of the Wild West right now as people are putting tools out there, but they haven't necessarily figured out how to monetize it yet. And so this is a good opportunity to try out a bunch of different things before they realize how to put a price point on things and start charging everybody.
For sure. Yeah, because I understand some of these systems are pretty expensive to run from the compute.
Oh yeah, they can be.
And so, this is like a great time to just test a bunch to see which ones are working for you.
Yeah, that's right.
What are, I'm just curious, you mentioned there's a bunch of them out there. I've messed around with several, but what are the big ones that are a good place to start with?
Yeah, I think the big four for text generating, obviously ChatGPT is the standard bearer. It's the first one that came out last year by a company called OpenAI. And they're the one that kind of led the charge forward with a lot of funding from Microsoft and other companies. I understand that ChatGPT was the fastest tech deployment in history. Something like when Facebook, it took Facebook over a year to reach a million users, and Instagram, it took a few months, and ChatGPT took 5 days to get 1 million users, which is just nuts.
Wow.
Yeah.
ChatGPT
and that
has
was
had
probably
several
only
models
limited by their own like bandwidth restrictions, huh?
Oh yeah, probably
it was
so.
hard
They
to
only
get on
had
at the very beginning.
Yeah, that's right. You had to get an invitation at first before they opened it up to everybody. So ChatGPT has undergone several model changes too in just the year that it's existed, and the ability has increased quite a bit. Bing Chat uses ChatGPT technology, Bing by Microsoft. They have a little bit of a different take on it. They kind of script it for whether you want more of a creative or more of a scholarly sounding answer. But Bing's AI can search the internet, so that's a neat feature that it can actually pull in actual sources with links and stuff. I think the other two that are most prominent right now is Google Bard. Bard by Google can also search the internet. They have a little bit of a different take. I find it's not as consistent with getting exactly what you're asking for, but they do provide like 3 answers at a time, so you can compare across several different answers. And then the fourth one that I've just started using recently, but has been talked about a bit, is called Claude by Anthropic. Claude has some neat features too, that it can process a whole bunch of text. You can copy a bunch of text and put it in. It puts it in a text file. It's great for summarizing a lot of text all at once.
I've heard of it. I've heard of that one, but I didn't know that it was open yet. So I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, check it out.
Good. So our, a big, one of our major audiences that we care about helping is small school teachers. So, I think that, where we want to help the small school teacher not be overwhelmed, because it's teaching is always overwhelming. If you're a small school teacher, there's even more to be overwhelmed with. But where, a busy small school teacher, where should they start looking to use generative AI in the class?
Yeah, I think the way I'd recommend starting is to go to one of those sites and just start plugging in some questions that you use in your classroom. I think the biggest benefit of this technology for teachers is that it can save you a lot of time in planning. So trying to come up with what you're going to do in class. First of all, just plugging in questions directly into the text prompt and seeing how it answers. And then you can follow it up with questions like, what would be some similar questions for a class of, whatever grade you have, 5th through 8th graders. Ask it for in-class discussion questions where you say, we want to talk about this with my class, but I want some good reflective discussion questions. You can ask it for a lesson hook, like a way to bring up a topic. In-class activities, you want to get your students up and moving around, but it takes so much time to craft those ideas. For a Christian school, you can ask it for worship ideas that relate to a topic you're studying. ChatGPT being based on internet text.
A sermon for me one time.
Yeah. It's really interesting. You want to double check all the...
Oh, yeah. But it was amazingly, I wouldn't have just got straight up and preached that. But it was short. Yeah. But, it was better than most sermons I've heard. Yeah.
That's a little scary.
ChatGPT it is a little scary. Being based on internet text, though, there's a lot of text out there, a lot of different devotional thoughts on all these pages. And if you can find stuff about a particular verse, it can be great for interactive worships or, a chapel or something like that. you can ask it for ways to involve your students more interactively in a topic, or ways to reach people at different levels of proficiency. I think that'd be a really good one for a multi-grade teacher to say, I've got 5th through 8th graders in my classroom. How can I tailor this activity for people at both ends?
I was just gonna say, let me repeat like my understanding of what you just said there, because I think it was really golden for the small school teachers. There's small school teachers. I attended one growing up, worked well for me, but I always admired my teachers to do everything. But yeah, so you might be teaching 4 or 5 or 8 different grades at one time.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to do a similar activity at the same time with them, but then level it, right? So then you could say, plug in this activity, plug in the discussion questions, plug in the assignment, and say, hey, can you to ChatGPT, like, use this, but give it to me for a 1st grader, give it to me for a 3rd grader. And it would level it. And obviously as a professional teacher, you're not just going to copy and paste that, but it's going to save you a ton of time in the processing and the planning and the, it's like a shortcut.
Yeah, it definitely has that opportunity for a teacher who's quite busy.
So, Lorin, tell us a little bit about your work you're doing at Pedagogy.Cloud and how teachers can use it.
Yeah, this is a company that's a startup, and it's interested in EdTech and AI, and they're trying to get tools that replicate what basically every other AI ed company has put out there. So, I've seen all these sites, 30, 40 different AI sites that are trying to get into education right now. So they're trying to do all that. But they have some tools that teachers can use. The teacher can get an account for free on this site called Socrat, SOCRAT.ai. And in that site, it has several different tools for teachers to use with students. And one of the things they do is it has a Socratic dialogue where you're talking to the AI and it just keeps asking you questions as you refine an idea. So the teacher can set it up so that they're trying to reach a certain objective. And so then it just keeps asking you questions. Another one is called a debate partner, where if you're trying to do a persuasive speech or an essay or something like that, it keeps trying to help you refine that by I don't want to say necessarily antagonistically attacking you or anything like that, but it shows you the weaknesses in your argument so you can improve it. Another one is where you can have a conversation with a historical figure. So the AI will be set up to respond as if it was Abraham Lincoln or, the General Lafayette or whatever it is. So you can ask that person questions about what life was like for them, how they would have responded to different things during their lifetime. And that's kind of neat. Really makes it very vivid for you historically to understand. So my projects for this company are in crafting some lesson plans, and they have me making some lesson plans for teachers. Some of them are integrations of AI where it actually gets the students using some tools, whether it be ChatGPT or an image creator or one of their Socratic tools on their website. And then some of them are dealing with the ethics of different AI applications just in life. So I made a lesson plan for teachers to take students through the ethics of self-driving cars and who's to blame if a self-driving car has an accident and stuff like that. And one of them was about deep fakes, and one is about facial recognition technology, and one is about virtual reality therapy, just the ethics of that. So these are all lesson plans that are kind of a complete package where a teacher can just bring it into class and start talking about it and get students thinking about all this stuff that could very well impact their very near future.
I'm sure that's going to be extremely valuable to a lot of teachers. One of the things that a lot of times we don't value enough is the curation of data. And it sounds like that's what the focus of your company there is really keying on, is curating not just the concepts and the ethics, but the content as well, and kind of packaging it up in a way that the teachers can just dive in and have usable resources. I might compare it to the early days of the Apple App Store versus the Android App Store. This is a tangent, but
I think I know where you're going.
One of the many reasons I was pro Apple for so long, because you had a very curated experience versus the Android store, which was uncurated, lots of spam in there. And so anyway, a tangent for you Apple lovers out there.
Very good. All right. Yeah. So to wrap us up, Lorin, tell us some additional resources that teachers can find if they want to pursue. Obviously, there's your company, Pedagogy.Cloud, and we'll provide links to as much as you can give us. Hopefully, maybe they'll let you like link directly to one of your lesson plans or more. But what are some additional resources that you could point teachers to?
Yeah, for teachers, one of the most useful things that I've seen is that OpenAI has put out a FAQ for teachers going into this school year, specifically related to ChatGPT use, the limitations and the benefits that they see in ways that they would recommend teachers using it. I'll send you that link, and that's really useful.
Please do.
Mm-hmm.
The way I actually met Desmond, like he said earlier, was that we were asked to create this course for the Adventist Learning Community, which is an online professional development site for Seventh-day Adventist teachers and pastors. But it's free and it's accessible for anybody. So we created a class that's called Empowering Education with AI. We've already had, in the 2 months it's been live, we've already had like 60 teachers on it, interacting and talking about how they've seen it used and suggestions for using it. There's teachers all over the world in this class, and also a bunch of pre-service teachers. I don't know where they're from, but there must be some professor who's having the pre-service teachers go through this class. But it has 6 modules. It talks about what they are, how to use them, some ideas for using them in elementary, high school, some of the ethics and issues with it, and then best practices. So that could be a really useful opportunity for teachers to go through that course.
Fantastic. I think I'm pretty proud of what we created there, and I really appreciate you joining us today, Lorin. We look forward to him having you on again. We appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you, Lorin.
Thank you so much. I'm always excited to talk about this topic. So thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks
for being here.
Thank you again for joining us on today's journey into EdTech Unpacked, as we explored the integration of generative AI and the concerns about them and how we can use them to enhance the classroom experience for teaching.
You know, we talked a little bit about not just what generative AI is, but those challenges Desmond just alluded to. That's probably what drives the conversation most when it comes up. But we want to encourage you, don't be afraid of the potential drawbacks. And that led us on to exploring the potential uses, how it can enhance your experience as an educator, how it can be an assistant to you, especially in the writing process right now with communications to students and parents. And that led us into an interview with Lorin Koch. And we heard a little bit about him, some of the neat work that he's involved in at his company. And we talked a little bit about the potential that generative AI has to impact our classrooms as we move forward. We want to just encourage you, dive in, get your hands on it. Don't be scared of it. Learn about it by doing.
That's for sure. And please send in your EdTech problems to be solved to our help desk segment, along with any other feedback you have through our website at edtechunpacked.com, where we have a place where you can submit audio recordings or a contact form to submit a typed response.
We want to leave you with a short blessing here today. It's easy to be scared of topics like generative AI, where we know so little about them as educators. It's not what we were here to do, we thought, and yet here we are, learning about them in real time and also trying to give guidance to our students. But be encouraged. God has placed you where you're at for a good reason. He has a special purpose for you. May you be enriched through the experience of learning yourself. Whether that's about generative AI or other things that are on your heart and on your mind, or might even sometimes seem like an obstacle that God can use to bless others. And remember, there's no substitute for great teaching. It's not just about the tools and technology you use, but how you foster meaningful relationships with your students to transform their lives. Until next time, we'll see you then.